Pastor Dave Bose presents products for teens, parents, youth workers, and pastors, including the books Talk to Me, Making the Most of Your Teenage Years, What Do I Do Now, College, Career, and Money, Sex and Dating, Strategies for Saving the Next Generation, What Does God Say About Hip Hop, The Power of Positive Choices, What Every Pastor, Parent, and Church Leader Should Know About Youth Ministry, and Kingdom Parenting. CDs and DVDs include Youth Ministry Training Course, Kingdom Youth Leadership, Young Champions, How Boys Become Men, Parents and Teens, Who Let the Dogs Out, A Message for Men, Steps to Greatness, Music Soundtrack, The Revelation, and Youth Alive Transformers CD. Dramas include The X Factor, Is It Love That I'm Feeling, and Rise of the Kingdom. Available now at www.daveburrowsministries.com or simply by visiting bfmmm.com or by calling 242-461-6430 or 242-327-0105. Welcome to the Dave Burrows Youth and Family Program, featuring inspirational and informative teaching concepts geared toward youth, young adults, and families from author, international speaker, youth and family specialist, Pastor Dave Burrows.
Okay, today we're talking about starting a business. Actually, there's a series that I have, and if you're interested in it, it's available in the bookstore afterwards. And it consists of 4 different areas. One is starting a business, the other one is managing and growing a business, and then the other is how to maximize technology and how to develop an information technology plan. Because business and information technology go together in today's world. And so it's important to learn both. But I'll share a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But let's begin. We're going to talk about tonight specifically starting a business. How do you start a business? My background, let me tell you a little bit about my background in this field, and then also my personal experience. Several years ago, there was a program being developed by the Ministry of Youth where an expert came down from the Organization of American States, and the Ministry of Youth seconded me to this program, which was designed to help young people develop businesses. And so from this OAS, Organization of American States expert, I learned all of the ins and outs of starting a business, including doing financial projections, preparing business plans, and so on. During the course of that exercise, I helped many prominent businesses that are in existence today get started. I helped them to get their loans from the bank, and also help them with their software installations. And in the process of me learning so much about business from this expert who was sent down here to the Bahamas, I began to explore my own business options. And that led me to one of the things that he taught us was he taught us a lot about computers. And so I started to study computers. At that time, I didn't know anything about computers. And as I studied it, I began to see that all of the trends were moving towards computers. And so from that initial experience, I learned enough about computers to start teaching it. As I began to teach it, I saw opportunities to sell computers. And so I developed my computer company, Megabyte Computers. Some of you may have seen the commercial. I also developed another business that I have today, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. It's a publishing company. But again, all of these things were developed as a result of the principles that I learned through the Organization of American States. He had brochures from the U.S. Small Business Association and a lot of pamphlets and business plans from the Small Business Association. So I got very familiar with the Small Business Association in the U.S. and also some of the other international organizations. So I'm going to share with you based upon that background, and I believe that you're going to see some things today that can help you. Now, let's begin. First of all, and let me just say this. My businesses allowed me to really develop a fairly comfortable lifestyle. I don't think I'm rich or anything, but I was able to build my house as a result of my business, not my salary, my job salary. A lot of things that I have been able to do have been as a result of my business, not salary. Because sometimes salaries are limited, and that's one of the good things about businesses. It takes limits off of your income. All right? So let's begin. Anytime you're talking about starting a business, you must begin with a business plan. The same way that when you build a house, you put together a plan and you submit it to the authorities, that's how you begin a business. You put together a business plan. When you do a plan for a house, it tells you where the bedrooms are going to go, where the doors are going to go, where the plumbing is going to go, and it gives you a picture of what your house is going to look like even before it's built. A business plan does that for a business. Most businesses fail in the world due to lack of planning. If you want to be successful, it begins with planning, and a business plan is essential for everyone who is going into business. Now, what is a business plan? Today, I'm going to go with you through the steps of developing a business plan. The first thing that you need to do is you need to write out a vision for the business. What is the business? So you begin with a vision. What do you envision? Do you plan on selling shoes? Do you plan on selling clothes? Are you selling whatever it is you are selling? What's the vision of it? What do you intend to accomplish? That's how you begin. You begin by asking yourself, what is the business that you're getting into? Now, as you begin to develop your vision, the next thing you want to develop is a business name. And the business name should always be simple and relative to the business. So, for example, if you're going to sell radiators, a simple name might be Dawn's Radiators. In my case, my computer company is Megabyte Computers. Instead of saying, the first company that sells shoes in the Bahamas as your business name, you come up with a simple relative name. Okay? And many times you would want to use names that are related to your industry. But you develop a vision for your business, you come up with a business name. The next thing that you want to look at is you want to look at the purpose for your business. What is the business about? The reason it's important to write these things down and to make them plain is because you can say, I want to sell parts, or I want to sell cars, or car parts. But now, car parts is a very, very wide field. You may need to narrow it down and say, I need to sell Japanese car parts or U.S. car parts. Because anytime you decide on selling something, many times you're going to be limited by space. So you have to narrow down your product list and be very specific about what it is you are selling so that you can focus. If you are unfocused, you might be trying to sell too many things and not have enough of any one thing to be successful. So you have to narrow it down, okay? For example, you're saying that if you're selling electronics, you say sales, service, parts, and supplies of electronics, okay? That's very specific. It's saying exactly what you're selling. Once you move on from those basic questions, let's move to some key questions. And these questions need to be satisfied in your business plan as well. Why do you want to go into business? Now, some people say things like this. I've met people when I counsel people in getting into business. Some people say, I want to go into business because I like doing this. If you like doing something, that's not a good reason to go into business. If you like doing something, that's called a hobby. Business is about making money. If you like doing something, if you like to fix cars, you can go in your backyard, you can fix your own car, you can call all of the neighbors and you can fix their cars because you like doing it. You don't have to get paid for it. But when you talk about business, your primary motivation for business should be to make a profit. That's what business is all about, profitability. If a business is not profitable, it goes under. So why do you want to go into business? Now, it's a good thing if you can be profitable at something that you love doing. And one of the things that you need to remember is that many times a hobby can become a business. But don't go into the business with a hobby mentality. All right? And sometimes a hobby that you have, I normally put it this way. If you are doing something that cannot pay your bills, that you like doing, that's called a hobby. Okay? And you may need to do it part-time, or you may need to do it for the love of it. When it starts to pay your bills, then it becomes a business. Somebody said to me one time, well, I love doing art, and I want to go to school to do art. And, they were saying, well, this is what I love doing. I don't make a lot of money out of it. But then they want to leave their job and pursue it. Well, that's still a hobby. Until it can generate the type of income that you need to sustain yourself, that's called a hobby. So it's very important to differentiate between a hobby and a business. You want to go into business to make money, or in some cases, extra money. Extra money is a part-time business. A full-time business is there to sustain you. The next thing that we want to look at, there's a difference between business and hobby, and I already kind of went through that. Now, what is the business? Be very specific when you're talking about what is the business. Sometimes people have very generic explanations about what is a business. For example, if you're going to sell shoes, what type of shoes are you going to sell and who are you going to sell it to? If you say I'm going to sell shoes, which market are you looking at? Are you looking at women's shoes? Are you looking at a specialized type of shoes? What is your business? Okay? Be very specific about what the business is. And here's another thing that's very important when you're putting together your business plan. List what skills or experience you have that qualify you for that business. Anytime you're thinking about going into a business, it should be something that you are knowledgeable about, or you have a strategic partner who's very knowledgeable about it. You don't have to necessarily know your business in and out. If you have somebody who's a partner with you who knows the business, your role may be just managing the money and giving business advice. But if you are the main person in the business, you shouldn't go into a business that you don't know. Let me give you an example. There was someone that I knew. They wanted to go into business, and they wanted to go into the business of selling cars. But they didn't understand mechanics. And they didn't understand, how cars work and everything. So they can go to an auction and pick up a car, and the car could be messed up, and they won't know because they don't have the knowledge in that field. It's very important to have knowledge in whatever field that you plan on going to, unless you have a strategic partner. And even if you have a strategic partner, it's important to learn the business. Okay? Very important. Now, the next question you want to ask yourself is this a part-time business or a full-time business? Now, sometimes people feel like you're not in business unless you're in a full-time business. The reality is that most of the successful business people that we know in the world, they never do one thing. They always have several businesses. And then many people, many successful people who have jobs, they have other businesses. And so you have to determine whether this business is going to be your primary source of income or your secondary source of income. And that helps you to plan. Because sometimes you can have a secondary source of income or a part-time business that eventually becomes a full-time business. In my case, I started a business, and it was a supplementary business. One of the reasons that I'm not in my business full-time is because my heart is in ministry. I really don't have to be in ministry. And ministry is not about, getting a great salary. Okay? So I don't have to be in ministry. However, this is what I like doing. But I also love business. And so when I started out my business, I started it out to supplement my income. And after a while of operating my business, it became very difficult for me to do both. So now I had a choice. Either I would stay in ministry, or I would go into my business, or my business is full-time, or I come up with a wild card. And the wild card was my wife. Now, my wife was working for an insurance company, making a lot of money, having a free company car, Christmas bonuses, travel, all of these kinds of things. And I had to approach her very deliberately and say to her, can you come and work for me for a $40,000 a year pay cut? Now, somebody said that's either faith, foolishness, or presumption. But to cut a long story short, what ended up happening was that initially she took the pay cut, and it was a real sacrifice. However, the first year that she got into the business doubled. The second year, it grew by 60%, and it kept growing, and today it's still growing. So I had the luxury of not having to decide between me and the business, but having a strategic partner who could run the business for me. So basically what I do, I have two businesses, and what I do in both of my businesses is I just review reports. I don't even have to get very heavily into the day-to-day. But when I started, I was the day-to-day. When I started my computer company and I was fixing computers, I get them in the morning, 7 o'clock, go to somebody's house or go to the office, fix a couple computers, come to work, lunchtime, go back there, fix some computers, all right, and so on. And, it can be very taxing. However, I had a goal in mind and I wanted something to accomplish. And sometimes you have to sacrifice to get to some of your goals. And sometimes you have to sacrifice to get from the preliminary level to the level where you want to be at. So we have to look at the whole idea of full-time or part-time. And one of the things that's important is if you have a part-time business, you have to make sure that it doesn't interfere with your salary. Your salaried business, your salaried employment, if you're working for somebody, because you don't want to be taking your time or doing your business projects on your job. So that's very important to remember as well. There's another CD that I did. I don't know if it's available now, but it'll be available in another week, and it talks about how to manage career and business. So you're working and you have a business, how to manage it too. But that's another product that I have. Now, when we're talking about business plan, again, here's something else that you need to keep in mind. You have to ask yourself, what is the need? Who needs your product? If there's nobody that needs your products, then you're not in business. The best businesses fill a need. I heard a story one time about a water company. Everybody was selling water, but what they offered that was different from the other businesses that were selling water was they delivered to your home. And so when you fill a need, you create a business. Okay? And so you have to determine who needs your product. Prepare a profile of a prospective customer you would like to attract. For example, you put together a profile and you said, here's who I want to sell to. If you're selling female shoes, you want to look at who's the prospective customer you want to sell to. You narrow it down. You say, well, I'm not looking for little children. I'm not looking for old people. My demographic for my business, my profile customer, is between 16 and 45. Okay? So now what you have just done is you've put yourself in a position, since you've narrowed down who your customer is, then you can know how to market. Okay? So it's very important to develop profiles of your prospective customer. Here's the next thing that you need in putting together your business plan. You need market research. Now, when we talk about market research, we're talking about examining what are the trends in the marketplace that impact your product. For example, in my case, I begin to realize that the trend in the world was towards computers and electronics. I checked on the internet and did research, and I'm going to tell you some good sources of research as we go along. But what I did was I found out information about what was happening. For example, how many households have computers in a particular city or country? If you start there, so let's say, for example, we were in Tampa, Florida, and Tampa has a population of 2 million people, and we found out that 1,000 people had computers in their home. And the trend is towards more and more people buying computers. Well, I know I'm in a good market, okay, because the trends indicate that this is the direction of the future. Let me give you another example. Suppose I'm selling, my primary product is VHS tapes. You know, the video cassette tapes. Okay? The trend in the marketplace is heading towards what? DVD. Not heading, has already headed. So if I were considering doing a VHS business and I do my research and check the trends, I'll realize that's not the business to get into. Right here at BFM, one of the decisions that we had to make is that we invested a lot of money in audio cassette machines and VHS machines. We had all these stacks of machines, and we continued to sell them even when the trend started to go in another direction. And so we had to do a reality check and say, look, most people in the world are not using VHS tapes. And so we had to change all of our equipment. So when you're getting into business, you have to look at the trends and the market tendencies that impact your product. All right? Now, here's another interesting thing that you can do in certain types of businesses. Let's say, for example, I'm developing a fast food joint. What you can actually do to check if you have a location already identified, you say, look, I like to sell in this particular part of the city. You can actually go on a street corner and go there for a day or a week or whatever it is, or pay somebody to go and do it, and do a customer count. Find out how many people buy from a similar, let's say Bamboo Shack or Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever it is. You do a customer count and you see how many customers go in and out on a given day. When you do things like customer counts, what it does is it gives you an idea of how many customers frequent a particular type of business. So if you're trying to go into that business, you can have an idea of how many customers you can expect, and then you can develop your financial projections based upon what you are likely to do. So you can do customer counts. Another aspect of market research is what is the likely profit margin on your product. Some products are very competitive, and your ability to get a high profit margin is low. So you have to look at your product that you are thinking about selling and determine what is the likely profit margin. Now, some things you can make up on volume, and some things you only need to sell one to make it. You know what I mean? If you sell one car for 800,000, you only need to sell two of them in a year. Okay, if you get a good profit margin on it. However, if you are making 25 cents on a product, then it's gotta be a heavy volume. So you want to look at the profit margin, and it's always good to choose a product that can generate the highest profit margin. The next thing we want to look at is feasibility. Does your product make sense in your environment? And you can use case studies or develop your own. There are certain things that may not make sense in a particular environment. Let me give you some examples. One of the things that I learned years ago, because I started a lot of different businesses. Sometimes people don't realize how many businesses I started. I started the bookstore for Bahamas Faith Ministries. And I went to the CBA convention, Christian Booksellers Association convention, and they had a manual on how to start bookstores. One of the things that they provided us with is they provided us with a population count for certain types of businesses. For example, you only needed 3,000 people in a given area to start a convenience store. However, to start a Christian bookstore, you needed 70,000 people. Okay? And so this helps you to determine the feasibility of your business in your particular environment. Sometimes we may look at something and we say, boy, this is a good product. But if you don't know those counts, and if you don't know the figures, then you can't really determine the feasibility. There are a lot of people who go in business, they say that the failure rate for businesses is something like 85%. Which means that a lot of people had an idea, and without doing research, they acted on the idea and they said, well, this is going to work. Well, it's not that simple. You have to do those feasibility studies. You have to do your projections. You have to do your market search. Otherwise, it's like building a house without properly planning. So study your environment. Now, here's the next thing that you want to look at. You want to look at business potential. Why would people buy from you? What do you offer that's different? Sometimes you are entering a particular field and there are already people in that field. What's different about you that's going to make people buy your product? The next thing is, who are your competitors? Going back to the previous one, remember what I said about the water company. What was different about them was that they were delivering. Okay, and so that separated them from other businesses. Who are your competitors? Anytime you're going into business, it's important to find out who your competitors are, and not only who they are, but what advantages do they have over you. For example, if you're going into a particular business and someone is already in that business, let's say you're going into fast food business, and you're going up against Kentucky Fried Chicken. Kentucky Fried Chicken has a very high name recognition. They have a reputation. And so when you're talking about competing with them, you have to figure out what advantages do you have over them. Are you going to have a new twist on the product? Are you going to be able to beat them on price? Whatever it is, you need to figure out your advantages. Are you offering a specialized service? Okay? Then you have to look at what are your disadvantages. Because in the same way that you look at advantages, you have to be realistic and look at what are the possible disadvantages. Let's look at some of the possible disadvantages. You may have low capital, so you don't have the type of investment capital. And let me say something about investment capital. One of the worst things in business is to be undercapitalized. So if you need $500,000 to start a business and you get $200,000, basically what you're doing is you're aiming straight for your foot. Because until you can find the funding that you need to legitimately get that business on the road, if you get that $200,000, you'll never really get where you're going because it's not enough. And so you have to look at the whole capital issue. And the capital issue helps you to decide how far you're going to go into the business and how you're going to launch. You may need to scale back on your plans according to the capital that's available. So you have low capital, low name recognition. These may be some disadvantages. And then you have to determine how you're going to overcome those advantages. So if somebody is better known in a business, if you have a competitor that's better known than you, how can you overcome that low name recognition? What you may need to do is when you get into business at first, you may need to advertise extensively to build your name recognition. You may have to try to do some creative things. Ride around in a car or hire some people to put in a truck and put a little banner on it with your company name on it because you can't afford TV advertising, and let them ride all around the city to increase your name recognition. Just some ideas that we're talking about. Okay? Now, here's the next thing, the business image. What image do you want to project? When you're talking about going into business, you have to determine what type of image you want to project, because whatever image you project, that's how you're going to be perceived. And you have to live up to what's being projected. So in some cases, you may want to project a home business, a small personal business. In other situations, you might want to project a small business. You have a small storefront, and it's not intended to be a large business, and so you market it. Your image is a small business image, okay? Or you may have a big business. You have a major complex, a large storefront. So you need to determine what your business image is. What type of image do you want to have? Another thing another aspect of this is maybe you may have a business that's a personal touch. You have a network of exclusive personal customers that you deal with. Excuse my spelling of the customers there. Didn't do my spell check. Now, let's talk about capturing customers. Whenever we talk about capturing customers, we need to begin with an advertising budget. Every business needs to have a budget, and your budget needs to consist of every possible income stream and every possible expense. And we're going to look at a brief budget schedule that I did. Not only do you need to have a budget, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on when we come to financing, you also need cash flow projections, and you need to understand some basic things about accounting. So you develop an advertising budget. Capturing customers, you can capture customers through word of mouth, the tell a friend network. You can use mail, that's hard mail. You can use email. Let me say something about email. When I began my computer business, I didn't have a lot of money for advertising. I couldn't go on ZNS or television. I couldn't use the newspapers as much as I would have liked. So what I did was I created an email database. I actually went in the phone book and I took all the email addresses in the phone book of all the businesses that I saw, and I send them out an email every week. And what ended up happening for me was I had people coming to me from Bay Street, from Lyford Key, all over, and they thought that, boy, I must have some kind of sophisticated business because my ads look so good that I emailed out. And there weren't other people emailing these ads out, but I attracted a lot of customers through using the email. And sometimes you have to be creative when you don't have money. So email or building an email network. Building an email network is very, very vital to business. Okay? Here's the other thing. Newspaper. You want to do strategic placements according to your budget. And you have to determine which medium is best for you. Some people, the newspaper may be best. Some people, television may be best. And when you're talking about television ads, you want to figure out what's the best time and place to place an ad. You may be able to get an ad cheaper, but is it the best placement? For me, what I've found is that my ads work best in the news. Because that's the one time that Bahamians, especially now, with Anna Nicole and all those kind of things, people watching TV for the news, all right? So you want to do strategic placements according to budget. Radio, the same thing. Strategic placements according to budget. Television, and it's important to develop an advertising plan. You don't want to just advertise, shoot in the dark. And over the years, one of the things that I've done in my business is I've developed an advertising plan. So I have an advertising budget. I know how much I'm going to spend. And your advertising budget can be related to your industry or your overall income. So if you have a business that generates $100,000 a year and your advertising budget is $1,000 a month, okay? But you have to determine what's right for your industry. So that's a little bit about capturing customers. Now let's look at the mode of business. And again, all of these things are in your business plan. When you're putting together your business plan, you want to put all of these things in place before you get started in business. Running a business is something totally different. And in the CD that I did on how to manage and grow your business and how to run your business, I go into a lot of things about how to run a business, certain things that you have to have in place. How will you sell to customers? Your location, physical structure, or are you selling on the internet? In today's world, the models have changed. One time ago, a businessman, a storefront, if it wasn't a storefront, you weren't in business. But now you have home businesses, you have internet businesses. And the internet allows you to compete with places that have a storefront. I just gave you an example of it. So you have to determine what mode of business that you want to use. Now, some businesses today use brick and mortar and internet. Brick and mortar means regular business. So, for example, what you will find is General Motors, they have stores, or Walmart has stores, but Walmart also has a site where you can buy anything on it. And that's what most people are doing now. They're combining brick and mortar with internet. The internet is the fastest growing avenue of business in the world. The growth rate for business on the internet has been at least 30% higher than regular business in the last few years. I actually had some of the figures in my session that I did on internet businesses, which is a separate session, how to maximize technology. And the internet keeps growing every year. Now, once you've determined those basic things that we mentioned already, then the next step is looking at equipment and staffing. And when we talk about equipment, one of the first pieces of equipment that you need, not only because I own a computer store, but just from my own experience, and I'm sure everybody who's in business would attest to it, you have to begin with a computer. The days of writing things down and putting things on paper and you got a little cash register and a little book, they are over. You got to have a computer. And your computer can do a lot of different things for you. And whenever you are going into business and you're trying to purchase a computer system, always begin with the software that you need before you purchase the hardware. Never purchase hardware first. Always purchase the software and then find out what the specifications for that software are. Because you could go ahead and purchase hardware, and then when you go to use it on your computer, you find that your specs don't match up, and so you got to add on or change your hardware. Okay? Business equipment. You may have some industry-specific business equipment, so you have to determine where to get that from. Then you have to look at staffing, the number of staff, the skills, who's going to be part-time or full-time. All right? Now we go to the financial part of it. And when we look at financial part of it, actually, let me come back to that. I just want to check something. Yeah, okay, financial projections. When I go to financial projections, I'll come back to those charts there. Business contacts. Now, let me tell you a little bit about getting the contacts you need to get into business. Okay? In this environment, and in most environments, one of the most important things that you can do is go to trade shows. I just came back from a trade show in Las Vegas in January, and I go to this trade show every year because it relates to my business. I need to know what the trends are in the marketplace, what the new developments are. And what trade shows allow you to do is to be exposed to many vendors in one place. If you had to go and try to locate all these vendors, you can never locate them. So whatever business that you are going into, even before you go into the business, attend some trade shows. And they have massive trade shows all over the U.S. They also have trade shows now in China and other places, because China is one of those arenas that's opening up with a lot of possibilities. But you go to trade shows. I went to the CES, which is a Consumer Electronics Show. Bill Gates was the keynote speaker, and they had all of the Dell people, and everybody was there. And, all the 120-inch plasma flat screens and all that kind of stuff. So you got to see where the industry is going. You got to meet people who can help you. You got to meet new suppliers, new sources. So trade shows are invaluable. All right. For those who are in the broadcasting, the NRB, which was just held in Orlando last week, I believe, National Religious Broadcast, this is another huge show. Another thing that's important is trade publications. So, for example, if you're in the bookstore business, the Christian Booksellers Association, they have a retailing publication, CBA publication. So get the publications of your industry because you learn about your industry. One of the big sources of information also is the American Embassy or the Chinese Embassy. There's a business section in the American Embassy. They have a whole section dedicated to business that can help you to locate sources, locate trade shows, locate people, locate possible investors, or people who want to partner with you, or people who have franchises who want to expand overseas. Okay? All these are important. The next thing is internet. Use internet searches, Google, Yahoo, topical searches. Today I own a publishing company. And the interesting thing about my publishing company is I went into the publishing business, and to this date, I've only met one supplier that I deal with. Never met the people. I went on the internet, and I wanted to get some information about publishing, and I found some sites, and I emailed the people, and I said, okay, what's your pricing, what's your turnaround time, what's your delivery time, and so on. And they send me back the information. And then when I needed to pay, we pay it over the internet or pay it to the bank or whatever. And I have produced any number of books for people and other products, and I never even met my suppliers. I did it all through the internet. I located them on the internet. We did the transactions on the internet, and then stuff was shipped to me. Okay? Now, one thing that's important when you're doing business on the internet is you want to make sure that the company is reputable. So you want to go to their website, see how long they were established, find out who their other customers are. Because sometimes people on the internet can take advantage of you. Okay? So the internet is an invaluable tool. Now, let's go to financial projections. When you're going into business, you have to project for 1 to 3 years in business. You have to put together a budget which consists of your income and expenses. And it's important to do a projection for the first 3 years. You don't want to do it for 1 year in business, because many times your business won't be profitable in the first year. You want to look over a period of time. Project income and expenses and determine when the break-even point is. Another thing that you want to do is a cash flow. A cash flow is different from a budget. A budget is your possible income and expenses. A cash flow is the actual cash movement during those times. So you can have a budget, and your budget can be a lot of things that don't involve cash. So you have to do a cash flow and a budget as well. All right? And let me say this about accounting. And let's as we go to the slide on budgets. Okay, let me say something about accounting. Accounting is one of the critical areas of business. If you start out with your accounting wrong, you could be messed up for years. Sometimes you may never recover. One of the most important things to do is to learn what an income statement is, learn what a balance sheet is. If you need to take a basic course in accounting, if you're going into business, learn these things. Learn what a balance sheet is, learn what an income statement is, learn what cash flow is, learn how to prepare budgets. Why? Because if you don't understand these things, you won't know whether you're winning or losing in business. And there are reports that you have to do every year. Of course, you may hire an accountant. An accountant is very essential. But you don't want the accountant to know everything and you know nothing. So you should have a basic knowledge, okay? Now, this is just a kind of rudimentary example. And I noticed that it's a little bit white there. So I don't, can you all see it? Can't see it too good. Okay, let's turn the lights off in the back there. So let's see if we can see it a little bit better. Okay, but this is a basic budget, which basically, and there were a lot of things that I didn't put in it because I'm just doing it as an example. Okay, can we see it a little bit better now? Okay, just a little bit better. Anyway, for the sake of time, basically what you see here is you have monthly income. And this is a bookstore. I use a bookstore as an example, okay? So we have books. We project for our monthly income to be $3,500 for books, $1,000 for Bibles, $3,500 for music, $1,800 for CDs, $950 for DVDs, $500 for gift items, for a total of $11,250. The annual projected income is $135,000. Then we go to the expenses. And in the expenses, we include things like utilities, insurance, damage and theft and returns, business license, salaries, advertising, rent. And at the end of the day, if you look at the bottom line that shows up in yellow, it tells you what your net profit or loss is. Okay? And you need to do that for your business. Yeah, you can change the background. He's gonna change the background, so you can look away from the screen for right now. But it's important for you to do financial projections, and especially if you're going into the bank to get a loan, the bank is gonna ask you for a budget. They're gonna ask you for your cash flow projections. Without those things, the bank is not even gonna listen to you, because if you can't tell the bank through figures where your company is going, they're not gonna be interested in you. Okay. Okay. While he's doing that, let me mention something about financing. When we talked about financing a business, there are some very important and simple things that you need to know about financing. There are several avenues that you can use. One is you can use a bank loan, and for many businesses, you need, if you have a significant business, you're going to need access to banking facilities. But there are some other creative ways of financing a project. Sometimes you may have an insurance policy. If you've had an insurance policy over the years with a cash value. I actually began my computer business using my insurance cash value. It wasn't a lot, but it was all that I had for business purposes at the time. Another thing that's interesting that I've learned to use is credit cards. Now, sometimes, if you are looking at financing through the bank and you're having problems with it, sometimes what you can do is you can creatively use your credit cards. So if you have personal credit cards or if you can develop business credit cards, let's bring it back up, see if it... Okay, there you go. That's a little bit better. That's a lot better, isn't it? Okay. So basically you see there where you have monthly income. And we don't have time to go into detail on this, but I just wanted to show you what your monthly budget would look like, what your annual budget would look like. Okay, so this is the income budget there. Now change the background on that one for me too, please. Okay, just bear with us for a moment. Let me say this about credit card. Let me tell you something that I learned about credit cards that's interesting, and some of you may have already discovered this. If you are doing business on a credit card, get a credit card that pays you back or has miles or points. Because what you could end up doing is, in the course of doing business, you can end up with 10 free tickets in a year. Or you can end up with hotel accommodations, not necessarily free, but I mean, if you had the same credit card and it's not paying you anything and you're using it, you're not getting anything back. Whereas if it has the points. Okay, in this case here, it's showing the expense side of the budget. And so you see right at the bottom here, this is your net profit or loss. Okay? And that tells you whether you're in business or you're out of business. Okay, now let's move on and go back to financial projections or business financing. Loans. You can use your business plan and projections when presenting to the bank. The next thing is you can use credit cards. Okay? And one of the things that's important to remember about credit cards is that if you pay off your credit card within 30 days, there's no interest charges. In fact, if you use your credit cards wisely, you end up with them paying you back as opposed to you paying them back. The credit card companies are not happy when you pay off in 30 days. But 30 days can allow you the time to sell your inventory, and then you can order again. And each time you order, when you're using your credit card, you are accumulating points or miles, and you're not accumulating any interest. We talked about insurance already. Sometimes it may be family members who believe in your product and trust you. And then another source is investors. You have some people that you call venture capitalists, private investors. You can approach somebody who has money and you can say, look, if you invest in this business, if you put up the capital for this business, I will give you 30% of the business, 40% of the business, or whatever it is. And there are people who like to do that because it's a profitable exercise. In one of my businesses, I had somebody who came and invested in the beginning, and at the end of the year, they could earn an extra $20,000, $30,000 for doing nothing other than helping to finance the business at the beginning. You understand what I'm saying? And so there are some people out there, but you have to be careful with it. You want to remember that, sometimes when you're starting in business, an investor comes along, it looks great. They're giving you $5,000 or $20,000 or whatever, and you'll be like, man, this can really help me get in business. But then they're asking you for 60% of your business or 40% of your business. And in the short run, it may work out, but in the long run, you may be regretting it. So it's important to look at all these avenues and determine what's best. Okay? Key partners that you must have in business. When you're starting a business, you must have an accountant. Good accounting is important from the beginning. Bad accounting causes losses. And when I say accounting, you need computerized accounting. At any given time, you should be able to look into your computer and tell what your sales are, what your expenses are, what your accounts payable is, what your accounts receivable is, what your vendor balances are, what checks you've written. You should be able to do all of that just by a click of your computer. If you can't do that, you're not set up properly for business. Accounting is essential, and accounting software. And there's some simple accounting software packages that don't cost a lot that are invaluable to business. One of them is a package called QuickBooks. I don't know how many of you have heard of QuickBooks before. Okay, QuickBooks is a beautiful program. Some accountants say they don't like it because it's too simple or it doesn't have certain things, but it's the most popular program in the world for business and personal finance. So you need an accountant. You also need a lawyer. When you're in business, you need a lawyer. You say, well, what do I need a lawyer for? Well, if you're going to do contracts, if you're in a business that could possibly get sued, if you're doing rents or leases, it's important to have a lawyer. Now, you don't have to retain a lawyer. You can use a lawyer when needed. But an accountant and a lawyer are important key partners. The next partner is the insurance professional. And you say, why would I need an insurance professional? Because there are liabilities involved in business, and you have to cover yourself. For example, let's say you have a business and you don't have any insurance on your money. So you get robbed. You just lost all your money. However, you can go to an insurance company. An insurance company can insure your money so that if somebody robs you, go into the bank or wherever you're going and you have the company's money on you, it's insured. So they rob you and then the insurance company pays you back for whatever you lost. But without insurance, they rob you and then you just take the hit. Okay? And there are a lot of other different insurances. I heard a story of a company one time that didn't have liability insurance. And so what happened was that one of their vehicles hit somebody and the person got injured. And so the lawyers from this guy's lawyers sued this company for somewhere in the neighborhood of like $800,000. Okay? And that basically wiped the person out of business. So that's why you need insurance protection and you need a lawyer. Because you never know what's going to happen in business. If somebody enters your premises and they slip down, they can sue you. In the United States, I mean, they have lawyers. That's all they do. They wake up in the night trying to figure out new ways to sue people. And so you need to protect yourself against these type situations. Here's another relationship that you need. You need a relationship with a banker. Develop a personal relationship outside of critical situations and keep an open dialogue. Anytime you have a banker, one of the worst things to do is to look for the banker when you're in trouble. Try to meet with your banker when you're doing good, especially when you're doing good, and remind him so that if there is a time when you're doing bad, you say, "Nah, I came to you when I was doing good." Okay? Also, if you can, allow your bankers to come out and view your business. A lot of bankers sit behind the desk and they don't know what you do, and so they don't have a feel for your business. So try as much as possible when you talk to your banker to build a relationship. Ask him to come out and look at your business, because when he looks at your business, he has a feel for what you're doing. If he has a feel for what you're doing, it's more difficult for him to just cut you off with the understanding of what you're doing. All right? And keep dialogue open. If you can't pay a bill, don't wait for the banker to call you. Call the banker first and say, "Look, I'm experiencing this particular difficulty. I'd like to work out something." And in most cases, the bank will work with you because they don't want you to go out of business. All right? Now, let's look at some startup steps. The first startup step is you want to reserve your name. You want to reserve your business name. If you have something that needs a trademark, you want to reserve your trademark. You want to get your business license. In some cases, you want to get what is called a shop license. A shop license is different from a business license. A business license is the name of your business and what you do. The shop license is the facility where you're selling from. So they're going to send in inspectors. They'll send in the fire department. They'll send in the environmental health. All of these departments will come in and they will inspect your property before you get a shop license. The business license you have to renew every year, and it's based upon your income level. In the Bahamas, you cannot operate without a business license. And they're making it harder and harder for you not to renew it every year. One time ago, people used to duck business license. But now, if you want to get something out of customs, you got to present your business license. Okay? So if you're starting up, you get your business license, your shop license, you would order equipment, place your orders for equipment, secure your leases. Now here's something that's very important: establish policies. Establish policies even before your business opens. What are your policies on returns? What are your policies on credits? On credit. And it's important to do these things because a customer can come in, and when you have policies, put them up on the wall. I don't take credit cards. I don't take checks or whatever it is. Or present a check with a check card. The return policy is, we don't give refunds on open packages. All of those kinds of things. You need to set your policies, and once your business begins, put those policies in a visible place. Select your staff, interview and select staff. Marketing, develop a time strategy in line with your budget. So for example, if you are getting ready to open, you may want to set a schedule of marketing before you open. So you may say, 4 weeks out, I begin a newspaper advertising. Or 4 weeks out, I begin a press release. And then 2 weeks out, I do this. And then 1 week out, I do this. And then on opening day, we have a grand opening. Okay? And sometimes you can get free advertising. If you're opening up a new store, that's an interesting story, you might be able to get it in the newspapers. And in some cases, you can write the story and submit it to the newspaper, because sometimes the newspapers are looking for stories that they don't have to write. And so you take your own photos and you write your story and you submit it to the newspaper, and that's a form of kind of free advertising. All right? You can also do things like do a little reception and invite all of your friends, or get them to invite their friends. So you develop a time strategy in line with your budget. Grand opening, determine if you need to do a grand opening, and use the press. Okay? Now, let me just mention a couple other things, and then we'll wrap up, and we'll take like a minute or two for questions. What I just did was I presented a quick overview of how to put together a business plan. There are a lot more details that I could have gone into, but didn't have a chance to, given the time that we have. But let me put in a little plug here for some products that I have. And there's also some things. This one is called Starting a Business and Maximizing Technology. And this one is called, actually there's two different CDs. One is Managing and Growing a Business, and the other one is Starting a Business. And then one contains the whole issue of how to grow a business, okay? And those are available in the bookstore afterwards. But one of the important things in business, in addition to what I said, and I think, as I said, I didn't have a lot of time to go into this, but using the internet. The whole strategy that I talked about with using email addresses, using the internet for different searches and so on, the internet is a valuable tool. There are a lot of people in the Bahamas who buy cars on the internet from Japan. I'm sure some of you all are driving cars from people who bought cars on the internet. And so the internet opens the door for business possibilities that may not have existed before. I know when I started in business, I learned the importance of research. Let me tell you how I started in the publishing business. Basically, what happened was, one of my books, I had 2 or 3 books that were done by major publishers, and I was receiving royalties every month, or every 3 months. But the royalty checks were not really that big. And so what I did was I went on the internet and I researched the publishing industry. And I found out what it costs to publish a book versus what the royalties you get. And I began to realize that, okay, if you're going to be the primary person who's selling your books, you can make a lot more money by owning the product than by having somebody else own it and pay you royalties. And so when I learned that, that's how I started that business. So I just want to emphasize how important the internet is. I see we have about 3 minutes, so I'm going to pause right now and find out if there are any questions. Was that helpful? Okay. We have any questions? Okay. How do you handle staff? Okay, again, that's something that I cover in managing and growing a business. But in the same way that you establish sales policies, you have to establish staff policies. And it's important to do a staff manual. Every employee should have a job description, and there should be a manual that outlines what your policies are and what the penalties are for violating those policies. Okay? That's very important. And also, in some cases, what you may need to do is you may need to give your staff training. You yourself may need to get well versed in the labor law. There's a labor manual that's available for every business. And it's important to know the labor laws, because if you have to fire somebody, you have to know how to fire people. You know, the way unions are and the labor laws are, if you're not careful, you can end up getting sued for wrongful dismissal and all kinds of problems. So you have to understand that whole, policy area. Normally in the Bahamas, if you're going to fire somebody, you have to issue 3 warnings and, written warnings on their file, and then you can go ahead and fire them based upon the justification. In some cases, you need to know when you can fire somebody and you don't have to compensate them. What is summary dismissal? Okay, if somebody is stealing, you don't have to pay them, but then you have to prove that they're stealing. Because if you don't prove that they're stealing, if it's just a speculation, and you go to the labor board, then they stole from you and you still got to pay them. All right? Okay, other questions? Yeah, all of it is covered in the CD. Other questions? All right. If there are no further questions, just want to thank you all for listening, and I trust that this information be helpful to you in your venture in this particular field. Let me just say this about business. One of the good things about business is that business allows you to give to the kingdom. Last year, Youth Alive is one of my passions, and it was through my business that I was able to give $5,000, to write a check for $5,000 for Youth Alive. When we talk about financing the kingdom, if the kingdom citizens are in good positions financially and business-wise, then it makes it a lot easier for us to accomplish things. If we want to give to missionaries, if we want to get new equipment for the church, the business people are people who can assist in that process. So, business is not an evil thing, it's a very good thing. Because the Bible says that the nation rejoices when the righteous are in power. So if the righteous own businesses, then it puts us in a position of rejoicing, because we're going to treat people fairly.
Thanks for watching the Youth and Family Program with Pastor Dave Burrows. If you would like to support this program financially, or purchase a copy of this program or any of the products by Pastor Dave, please call the number on your screen, or email us at davyb@callwave.com, or visit us online at www.daveburrowsministries.com. Pastor Dave Bose presents products for teens, parents, youth workers, and pastors, including the books Talk to Me, Making the Most of Your Teenage Years, What Do I Do Now, College, Career, and Money, Sex and Dating, Strategies for Saving the Next Generation, What Does God Say About Hip Hop, The Power of Positive Choices, What Every Pastor, Parent, and Church Leader Should Know About Youth Ministry, and Kingdom Parenting. CDs and DVDs include Youth Ministry Training Course, Kingdom Youth Leadership, Young Champions, How Boys Become Men, Parents and Teens, Who Let the Dogs Out, A Message for Men, Steps to Greatness, Music Soundtrack, The Revelation, and Youth Alive Transformers CD. Dramas include The X Factor, Is It Love That I'm Feeling, and Rise of the Kingdom. Available now at www.daveburrowsministries.com, or simply by visiting bfmmm.com, or by calling 242-461-6430 or 242-327-0105.
Welcome back to Megabyte, sir. May I be of service?
Yeah, for starters, wipe that grin off your face. You make me nervous.
Like this?
No, like that.
Sorry, really can't hide it.
I know, cause you with the Megabyte and you excited. And speaking of excited, look at the wife on fire. Tripping out and flipping out on computer I buy.
But you ain't seen nothing yet, we got more.
Hush your mouth. Now the woman send me back for the whole store.
The store?
Don't be silly, boy. I mean the things in here.
Oh.
50 million things since the last time I been here. She want a laptop, a USB drive, a UPS backup so that she can stay live.
Live?
I mean like when your current go poof.
Like a blackout.
So scared and nearly going through the roof.
Better look out. Out of sight, new thing be sell. Dread, you can get yourself a Dell.
A dead stuff, I'm joking.
Don't be joking, I ain't joking. All the speed that you need and you can take that as a token.
But you lie.
I ain't lie, we get motherboards and memory. Anything computer related, anything you get from me.
I hear you. Say your number one more time straight.
3264028, you're straight. Come.
I know you hooked me up the Megabyte style. Ooh-cha, look, I done been here for a while. I gone.
One Rib Publications is your source for book publishing and printing, CD and DVD duplication and packaging, blank CDs and DVDs, graphic design, website design and hosting, photocopying and production of flyers and posters for events. Visit our offices to see our wide array of authors, speakers, and musicians who use our services. We have published books for Bahamians and international authors and have produced CDs and DVDs for recording artists worldwide. Give One Rib a call at 322-5281. That's if you want it done right the first time.